Chapter 5. Alone in the Forest. Schulich returned to the forest. It seemed happy to have him back, although it was the same forest he had left that morning. It was also a different one. It was his and Yoshile's forest that protected and saved them. For the first time, Schulich felt love for it. He walked deeper and deeper into it until he came to a dark and tangled hiding place. In the following weeks, he slept in trees and learned to climb them like a monkey. He clambered up them and leapt from tree to tree by swinging on the branches. His shoes had fallen apart long ago. The soles of his feet grew so tough that he could run on anything without feeling pain. He learned to move as stealthily as the forest animals and to treat infected scratches from bushes and vines by lancing them with a pine needle, squeezing out the pus and disinfecting them with his own urine. In daytime, he rarely thought of his friends or felt lonely. He was too busy looking for food and water and observing everything around him. He was fascinated by every animal and bird, by every sound that he heard and movement that he saw. Yet, at night, when he crawled into a tree, all kinds of thoughts ran through his mind of Yosele, of Yankel, of his mother, even of Yone, the shoemaker. Sometimes he woke in fright, startled by the cry of an animal or night bird. He stopped counting the days. He lived from minute to minute, hour to hour, morning to evening. He drank rainwater from puddles and ate berries. While roaming in the forest one day, he came to a brook that looked like the one his gang of boys had camped by. From then on, he returned to it every evening, guiding himself by the moss on the trees. He didn't have a slingshot, but he did have a good throwing arm. He took some smooth stones from the bottom of the brook, whittled a thick stick with his piece of glass, and found a small clearing in the forest and sat, waiting in perfect stillness against the trunk of a tree. At first, little animals appeared, darting in and out of sight. Although he didn't believe he could hit any of them with a stone, it was fun to watch them. Sometimes a chipmunk stopped to look at him anxiously, sniffing him at him from a distance before it disappeared. After a while, a doe came along with her fawn. He sat motionless while she stared at him, trying to guess what sort of creature he was. Then, with a single bound, so quick it was almost invisible, they were gone. He went on sitting there. The noise of something large shuffling through the undergrowth told him wild boar were approaching. Soon a couple appeared with its piglets. They looked like the village pigs, but were furry and had long, scary tusks. Schulich scrambled into a tree without waiting to see if they noticed him. He had climbed down and returned to his place when a hedgehog entered the clearing. Schulich fell upon it with his stick. The hedgehog rolled itself into a ball, its quills bristling. Schulich thrust its stick against the round form and pressed with all his might until it ceased to stir. Then he turned it over and slit its belly with the piece of glass. At night, he lit a fire and singed the hedgehog over it. This made it easier to cut away the skin and quills. He carved chunks of meat and roasted them on a spit. A few days went by before he succeeded again. This time he killed a squirrel with the stone. He cut off its head, skinned and cleaned it, and rinsed it in the brook. Then, too hungry to wait, he ate it raw. He was no longer sure he wouldn't eat snails like Yosele. "What are you doing here, boy?" Schulich gave a start. He hadn't heard a human voice in a long while. It was the forester. Schulich recognized him. He just didn't recognize Schulich. "Picking berries," Schulich said. "I can see that." The man regarded him. He was barefoot like a farm boy and dressed in rags like a homeless orphan. "Where are your parents?" "I don't have any." "Where are you from?" Schulich shrugged. "Are you a Jew?" "No." "What's your name?" "Yurik." "What's your family's name?" "I don't know." The man took a minute to digest this. Then he said, "My sister's looking for a boy to take the cows and sheep to pasture." Schulich didn't know what to say. He remembered being locked in the bottle room, but he missed human contact. The man smiled at him. It looked like a smile he could trust. It was hard to believe he was someone who turned Jewish boys into the Germans. "Look, son, when autumn comes, you'll die of hunger and cold. My sister's farm is outside the village. You'll be safe there." Shirley wanted to say that he was safe here too, but he didn't. He could tell that the man knew he was Jewish, and yet he was asking him nicely. He could just as well have taken him prisoner or by surprise. My sister lives near the forest. You can always come back here, the forester added. All right, Shirley agreed. He followed the forester. Although a patch of light shining through the trees made him think they were nearly out of the forest, it turned out to come from a large clearing in which the forester's house stood. A dog came to greet them, wagging its tail. Behind it came a woman with a baby. Who do you have here? There, she asked. A boy, to work for my sister. Like the one who worked for us? Something like that. Come, boy, the woman said. I'll give you something to eat. She left him alone with a bowl of potatoes mashed with lard and fried onions. He gobbled it up. A half-eaten loaf of bread was on the table. Though he didn't know if it was meant for him, Shirley kept eating chunks even after he was bursting. When he couldn't stuff himself self any more, he cut the last piece of bread and hid it in his pocket. Meanwhile, the forester led a horse from the stable, saddled it, and sat Shirley on the saddle in front of him. They rode as far as the small farmhouse They rode as far as a small farmhouse next to a field of potatoes. The village beyond it was indeed close to the forest. Two barking dogs ran toward them, then calmed down and wagged their tails. A woman stepped out of the house. The forester dismounted and gave her a hug, whispering something to her. He lowered Shirley from the horse. The dogs sniffed at him. He was frightened. Don't be scared, the woman said. They're friendly dogs. A few auxiliary buildings stood around the farmhouse. It was a barn, a sheep shed, and a storeroom. In front of the house were some fruit trees and a row of vegetables. Chickens ran in the yard. A sow lay on the ground, nursing her litter. Wait for me here, the woman said, stepping into the house with her brother. Shirley stayed in the yard with the dogs. He took the bread from his pocket and chewed it slowly. The dogs approached him to see what he was eating. He rolled a ball of dough between his fingers and offered it to one of them. The dog lunged for it. Scared, he dropped it, and the dog caught it midair. Then the second dog came for his share. This time Shirley held on to the dough until the dog took it from him gently. He went on eating while feeding the dogs between one bite and the next. They're friendly, he thought, repeating the woman's words. He reached out to pet one. The other came to be petted too. The forester and his sister emerged from the house. The man slung his rifle on his shoulder, mounted the horse, and nodded to Shirley. Be a good boy, he told him. His sister waved. Then she told Shirley to come to the barn. The dogs followed them. Inside were 3 cows, 2 small calves lying on some straw. The woman showed Shirley how to fill their feed stalls with hay and how to lock the barn door when he left. Now, repeat what I told you, she said. He passed the test with flying colors. She took a bucket and sat down to milk the cows. Shirley watched. Bring me that cup hanging on the wall, she said, pointing with her chin. He took the tin cup from its rusty nail and brought it to her. She filled it with milk and handed it back. Drink, son. What's your name? Yurik, Shirley said. He gulped the warm milk eagerly. When he had finished, the woman told him to rinse the cup beneath the spigot and hang it on the nail. Why don't you milk her too? Why don't you milk her too? He asked, pointing to the third cow. Don't you see how fat she is? She's about to give birth. When she does that, she'll have milk. Next, she brought him to the sheep shed. The 4 sheep bleated when they saw her. She showed Shirley how to feed them, took him to the well, and showed him how to draw water. The well was round and deep, with a white brick enclosure and a little roof that rested on 2 columns. Beneath the roof was a log with a rope attached to a crank. The other end of the rope dangled into the well. The woman leaned over the well and called down into it. Her voice echoed back. Shirley stood on tiptoe to clear the brick wall and called, Ahoy! 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 His call echoed too. The woman smiled at him, and he smiled back. She showed him how to draw water by turning the log with the crank, but the crank was too high for him to reach. He looked around the yard, saw an empty crate, brought it to stand on, and cranked up the bucket of water. The woman praised him for using his head. She took the bucket and filled the cow's drinking trough. It took 3 buckets to be full. Then she showed Sherlock how to fill the sheep's trough. All right, she said. Now go to sleep. In the morning I'll teach you to take the cows and sheep to pasture. He looked around the shed. Sleep where? Make yourself a bed with some straw. She called the dogs and left Sherlock with the sheep. Sleeping on straw was fine with him. At home, his mother had stuffed their mattresses with it. In the middle of the night, he was woken by the sound of rain. A cold wind blew through the open window of the shed. Too drowsy to think, he crawled in among the sheep and fell back to sleep. When the woman came to wake him in the morning, it was a beautiful sunny day. The only sign of the rain were the puddles in the yard. He followed her to the barn. She milked the cows and gave him a cup of milk to drink again. Then she slung a knapsack over his shoulder, handed him a walking stick, showed him how to drive the cows and sheep ahead of him, and accompanied them to the pasture. The 2 dogs came too. It wasn't far from the farm to the broad green meadow. Your job is to keep the cows and sheep from wandering into the neighbor's field, she explained. That's all you have to do. When the sun is low, bring them home. How? Just say, Home, girls! You'll see they know the way better than you do. She pointed to the knapsack and said, There's a lunch for you there. Eat it at noontime. How will I know when it's noontime? The woman laughed. That's when the sun is directly overhead. You'll learn. In the evening, you'll eat supper with me. She called to the dogs. Once you're friends with them, she said, you can take them along with you. Sherlock didn't wait for the sun to be overhead before examining the knapsack. There was half a loaf of bread, a bottle of water, and some farmer's cheese wrapped in newspaper. He ate some bread and cheese and left the rest for later. The work was easy, although he was more frightened of the cows than of the sheep. He was able to head them off each time they neared the neighbor's field by shouting and waving his stick. To his surprise, they obeyed him. Instead of using their horns to drive him off and go where they wanted, they backed away and returned to the meadow. The day passed without a dull moment. He lay in the grass and watched the cows eat, cropping the grass with their tongues. Strangely, they had no upper teeth. The sheep, on the other hand, used their lips as teeth, as though they were eating from a plate. When he was tired of studying them, he turned his attention to the grass in front of him. Beetles, ants, and other bugs were crawling around in it. It was a different world from in the rotting leaves and pine needles of the damp forest. A brightly colored butterfly flew by and he raised himself on his elbows to follow its flight. He didn't want to risk hurting it by trying to catch it. He did try catching some darning needles without success. 2 boys were pasturing cows in the distance. He gazed at them, wondering if they might someday become friends. One was in charge of some cows and the other a few sheep. In the meadow nearer to him was a girl. She was guarding over 2 cows who were tethered to a stake in the ground. The sun began to set. Big and red, it sank into the clouds on the horizon. Sherlock brandished his stick and called out, Home, girls! To his astonishment, the cows lifted their heads, mooed in agreement, and began walking back to the farmhouse. The sheep followed. They entered the farmyard. The dogs let out a few barks and ran to greet them, tails wagging. The woman fed the cows and sent Sherlock to water and feed the sheep. By the time he returned to the barn, she was done milking. She told him to wash at the trough and join her in the house. The house had only one room, just like their old house in Blarney. The stove was lit and food was cooking, filling the room with a mouth-watering smell. The woman sat him at a table and filled 2 plates. On them was an omelet and noodles mixed with something strange. The house had only one room, just like their old house in Blarney. The stove was lit and food was cooking, filling the room with a mouth-watering smell. The woman sat him at a table and filled 2 plates. On them was an omelet and noodles mixed with something orange. It's pumpkin, said the woman. Don't you know what it is? What that is? No, Sherlock said. I'll show you in the garden. She poured cream over it and all and handed him a glass of milk. After supper, you'll take off your clothes, she said. I'll wash them and give you something to wear while they're drying. Later, she gave him a grown man's nightshirt. Sherlock took his butterfly and piece of glass from his pants pockets, undressed, and put it on. In the morning, the woman told him, "I burned all your clothes. They were so full of lice that they would have walked away by themselves if I had put them on the floor." She gave him a large shirt with sleeves she'd cut and a pair of pants she had shortened. The waist was folded over and had a rope belt. Now I look like Yosele, Sherlock thought. He wore his new clothes to the pasture. After a while, he decided to introduce himself to the two boys. Yet, as soon as he started in their direction, the cows headed for the neighbor's wheat field, forcing him to turn around and hurry back. The girl was in her meadow again, too. She had the same two cows tethered to the same stake, around which they grazed in a circle. But although she was nearer and easier to reach than the boys, she was only a girl.